Hi, I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get straight to our top story. The left mobilizing against President-elect Donald Trump. New York City's far-left mayor Bill de Blasio today sent a battle warning to President-elect Trump, threatening legal action over Trump's rumored Muslim registry and pledging continued defiance on federal immigration law.
If all Muslims are required to register, we will take legal action to block it. If the federal government wants our police officers to tear immigrant families apart, we will refuse to do it. If the federal government tries to deport law-abiding New Yorkers who have no representation, we will step in.
With Mr. Trump's campaign pledges to punish sanctuary cities and to institute law and order policies, battle lines are quickly being drawn between the Trump administration and liberal big cities. Joining us now for reaction in Little Rock, Arkansas is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is a senior advisor to the Trump campaign. And here in studio, Michael Wildless, an immigration attorney who represents Melania Trump and a former prosecutor. Sarah, we'll start with you. So Donald Trump has said that he was going to be tough on immigration. We all knew that. When he says he's putting up Jeff Sessions, Senator Sessions, as an AG, he says he will continue to be tough on immigration. Why are the big city mayors like Bill de Blasio and Rahm Emanuel having such a hard time following federal law?
Look, that's a question you'll have to ask them, because I think myself and the rest of the country are pretty baffled why any major city mayor would completely ignore federal law. That's not what they were elected to do. They don't have the authority to just completely ignore federal law. And frankly, they take in billions of dollars from federal grants that can be pulled back and taken away from them if they don't follow the law. And I think they need to be really careful about the situation they put their cities in by completely ignoring federal law and not doing what the president-elect and what the top law enforcement official, which will be Senator Jeff Sessions as Attorney General, are enforcing. Look, the law is there for a reason. We don't get to decide which ones we want to follow and which ones we don't. And that applies even to big city liberal mayors like in Chicago and San Francisco. And I think it's a big, big mistake for them.
And in New York, Michael, what's really going on here? Are these mayors, they really plan on following and pursuing this line, or do they just want to make a bigger platform for themselves?
Thank you for having me, Eric. I had the privilege of actually being a mayor myself in New Jersey and a former federal prosecutor, so I understand the issue and the debate that's going here. We cannot set policy or erode out of fear or erode the public trust of anybody on U.S. soil. We have to make sure that we act competently when we respond here. We should be cultivating foreign national. We should be acting.
What does that mean? If they break the law and come here, we should say you can stay?
We should be acting to develop intelligence and to work with our community. Are we going to now start registering? Are we going to register Muslim citizens?
Right, well, we'll get to registry in a second, but let's talk about the sanctuary city policy that some 300 municipalities around the country institute, where if you're caught and you're an illegal, you're not going to be turned over to ICE, immigration enforcement.
We have a bifurcated system. Federal government handles immigration, local police handle local matters. The police cannot they don't have the forensic ability to enforce immigration laws, and they should be working to cultivate foreign nationals.
Should a local police
it's not their job. It's
department
the job.
Turn over an illegal that they catch to ICE? That's the law.
If somebody
should they not do that?
If they committed a very serious crime, it's up to the federal government to go get that individual. It's not the job for men in blue, ladies in blue, to start turning over police to from local communities. We're getting this wrong, Eric, and we can't afford to do
this. Enforcement to enforce the law. It is the job of local law enforcement to actually enforce the law. This is the law. It's not like we're making things up and we've just decided we want this to happen.
Were created during President Reagan's reign. We have a new normal now. We've now shifted the responsibility to employers.
But the law hasn't changed.
But the
law is still the law.
The vibrancy that the immigrant community has given, if you just take a few nautical miles from this studio, the Guatemalan and the El Salvadoran community in the South Bronx, we are not honoring that old age, that immigrant vitality, that DNA that has made America special.
Sarah, I don't think anyone, including Donald Trump, has ever said we shouldn't have immigrants into the United States. No, I think the policy is, yes, have a wide open immigrant policy, yet make it legal.
We have to have law and order in this country. Without borders, without law and order, we are not a country. And we can't just decide to pick and choose which laws we want to follow, or we get just pure chaos.
You have right now people living in fear.
The precedent that these mayors are setting by ignoring the law is just, it's absurd. You cannot function as a country if you do not have law and order.
I agree that we are a nation of law and we have to restore order. But you have people now living in fear. There are rabbis going into mosques to give people the assurance that what happened following 9/11, the NSEERS registration for non-immigrants is permitted by law and will be debated. But to take American citizens who are Muslim and then put them,
nobody has said that we're going to take American citizens.
Hold on, we're conflating two different stories here now. The other part of the segment that we teased up here was whether there should be a Muslim registry. Now, Chris Kobach, the Secretary of State of Kansas, who also met with Donald Trump, Sarah, is one who is in favor of a Muslim registry. Now, Donald Trump and the Trump administration has said, we're not necessarily going to look for all Muslims to register. That's not what they're looking for.
That's not going to happen just because Chris Kobach said it. He's not the president-elect. Donald Trump is.
Good.
He is not putting in place a Muslim registry. What he said has been very clear. It's been very consistent, is that we're going to put a temporary hold on countries that have a problem with ISIS, like Syria, until we can vet people coming into our country better. The number one job of the president and the president-elect are to protect the citizens in America. We can't do that if we're allowing just open borders and we don't know who people are coming into our country. He's not saying we block everybody or that we block all Muslims, but that we have to have a process in place to vet these people coming into our country. We need to know why they're here, what they want to do here, and make sure that they're not looking to do something.
Sarah, part of our duty here is to get this right, to make sure that we aren't going around in a Gestapo-like society and making lists of people that we don't want to have here. We can't afford, and we have to be smart and fair in the way we execute the laws. The laws are on the books and they should be respected. When a person comes into America illegally, they break the law. The ongoing retention or being on U.S. soil is not a continuous crime. We have to address this. Part of our homeland is at risk if we don't.
You've just admitted that when you enter the country illegally, you've broken the law.
But it's not,
it doesn't go away.
But it's not the NYPD.
But it also doesn't go away once you spend. This isn't the game of tag where you're safe if you've been there for 5 minutes.
Respectfully, you're wrong. Once you're on U.S. soil, you're entitled to the protections of the 14th Amendment. And you're not going to have the NYPD round up people because the federal government has a broken system.
Federal law says if you're illegal and you're caught, you will go back to where you came from.
Good luck taking 11 million people with 5,000 ICE agents.
I'm not suggesting that's the answer. I'm simply saying that's what the law says. All right, we're going to leave it right there. Sarah and Michael, thank you very much. Still to come, the battle brewing among Democrats over whether to give Donald Trump a chance in a moment. In the Impact segment tonight, the Trump administration is facing a possible showdown with the left, not just on the sanctuary cities issue, but on many of the president-elect's cabinet choices as well. How will all this play out? Joining us now from Washington, Katie Pavlich, a Fox News contributor, and in Boston, Marianne Marsh, a Democratic strategist. Marianne, I'm going to start with you. We just talked about Bill de Blasio saying we're going to protect our sanctuary city status. We heard Rahm Emanuel last week saying the exact same thing. This is in direct conflict with what President-elect Donald Trump has promised. Maybe even Jeff Sessions, if he is confirmed as the AG, he will go ahead and go after sanctuary cities. Your thought?
Well, I mean, no one should be surprised that Donald Trump will do this because he said he would during the campaign. So that shouldn't be a surprise. What should be a surprise is it would put him at odds with national security officials, local law enforcement officials, and we tried it before and it didn't work. And I think that's the real issue here. If you're trying to make a political point or fix a problem, that's, I think, the real debate. And we know that Muslim registries and all of this doesn't work because immigration is broken. So fix the immigration problem, fix the immigration system writ large, then that addresses sanctuary cities and everything else. But when you have national security officials, local law enforcement, our allies abroad saying this hurts us, and we know it doesn't work, that's why we stopped it, why would you do it again?
Katie, for a second, let's talk about that. So these big mayors, they say, we're going to do this is what we're going to do. You know what is really effective? When the funding slows down or stops. Then they tend to change their mind.
Yeah, and I think that they will if Congress and Donald Trump decide they want to pull that funding during the next budget period. But I think we need to be very clear here about what the Trump administration is suggesting for these sanctuary cities. Nobody is suggesting that local law enforcement enforce immigration law. They're simply saying that they're going to come in with the federal government, with ICE, and do these raids that they absolutely have the authority to do. And with the funding, I find it interesting that these big city mayors are willing to put that funding at risk, which benefits their American citizens living in these cities, for the sake of, again, benefiting illegal immigrants who are living in these cities. And by the way, on the point of our allies overseas, and for example, people in Mexico, officials in Mexico saying that this is a bad idea. Of course they think it's a bad idea. Illegal immigrants send billions of dollars back to their home countries by working here in the United States. And so this isn't a matter of putting local law enforcement against their communities. This is simply the federal government saying, we have an illegal immigration issue. We are here to enforce our immigration policy, and federal agents have the capability and the power to go in and address the problem, whether these mayors like it or not.
All right. I want to pivot a little bit because I said we were going to talk a little bit about some of the potential cabinet appointees under President-elect Donald Trump. Marianne, so a lot of people said that Donald Trump was one-sided. He was followed by white men. They got him elected, etc. I'm looking at over the weekend the people that he's seen. Tulsi Gabbard stands out for me today. Yesterday or Saturday or Sunday over the weekend, he saw Michelle Reed, the Department of Education. He seems to be extending an olive branch to the left, to the other side.
Well, we'll see, first of all, if he actually appoints any of them. And second of all, I wouldn't consider Michelle Reed or Tulsi Gabbard the left at all. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard supports keeping Assad in place and continuing the bombing in Syria with the Russians.
A Democrat representative, however, nonetheless, right?
Right, but not a left. And Michelle Reed is all for, charter schools and a lot of other things that a lot of Democrats don't agree with. So they would be two very controversial appointments with Democrats. So I think I'd be careful how I characterize them. But we'll see if they get appointed.
Go ahead, Katie, your thoughts?
Based on the devastating state that Democrats are in right now, both at the federal level with the White House, House, and Senate, but also at the local level with state legislatures and governorships, they really don't have a choice but to reach out to Donald Trump and to work with him. And so if you can get a Bernie Sanders supporter like Congresswoman Gabbard to even be the State Department, the Secretary of State, which she's up for, I think that he's doing what he said he would do and trying to place the best people around him. And he apparently thinks that these are the people visiting and having these meetings with him could fulfill those positions. As Marianne said, it depends on whether he appoints them, but he's certainly looking at all of his options.
And I'll stay with you, Katie, very quickly. Mitt Romney, we all know that he spent a couple hour and a half or so with Donald Trump over the weekend. Your thoughts on that? And Rudy Giuliani has said, hey, I'm the guy for Secretary of State. But again, Donald Trump, he was attacked pretty harshly by Romney throughout the campaign season, yet he extends an invitation to him as well.
Well, I think Mitt Romney is well-versed in global affairs. Obviously, he talked about how he had a good discussion with Mr. Trump. But based on the pattern of behavior with the appointments to the loyalists, I think that Rudy Giuliani probably has a better chance of getting that position. Not to mention, I don't think that Mitt Romney could really reconcile his views on Russia with those that Donald Trump holds. So it's nice they had the meeting, but I'm not so sure that will work out.
Final thought to Marianne.
Well, just quickly on Katie's point, Trump doesn't need Democrats. He's got all the Republican votes he needs to do anything he wants. So let's be clear on that. In terms of Romney versus Giuliani, I feel like this is like the multiple elimination series on The Apprentice, where he's pitting everybody against each other, seeing how they do in the interviews, and then we'll see who comes out on top. But Rudy Giuliani's stock clearly has fallen. That's pretty clear. And that he's not even in consideration, it doesn't seem, for Secretary of State anymore. It looks like DNI. And Mitt Romney, I'm not sure he can toe the Trump line, but we'll see. So it's going to be really interesting to see who he picks when you look at his first four picks, which were to appease every supporter of Trump's. Very controversial. Flynn, Bannon, Sessions. That was to appease those supporters.
Reince Priebus, great pick.
But that was also to appease them, too. He toes the line. He toes the line, and that's why he's one of them.
You got to leave it right there. Marianne, Katie, thank you so much. Directly ahead, will Democrats in Congress work with President-elect Trump, or will they block his every move? We'll analyze that situation when the Factor comes right back. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, congressional Democrats and Donald Trump. Some Democrats are already bracing for a fight, unwilling, it seems, to give the president-elect even a chance.
If he tries to defund Planned Parenthood, if he tries to kick people off their health insurance, if they try to privatize Medicare or cut taxes for the wealthy, we're going to have a Youngstown street fight in the Capitol. That's what's going to happen.
Joining us now for reaction, Austan Goolsbee, University of Chicago economics professor and former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors in the Obama administration. You saw Tim Ryan there saying it's a Youngstown street fight if Donald Trump tries to do some of the things he promised to do.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar that Youngstown was known for its street fighting, but I agree. You know, the Democrats are there are a lot of Democrats. It's a big party, very diverse party. They're of two minds because one side of the party has actively not done what Republicans did after Obama won really in a landslide in 2008, which was Mitch McConnell and others come out immediately and say, we're going to fight him on the beaches, on the sand. We're not going to let him do anything.
Right. We're not trying to find Democrats seem to be like some sort of wandering party of bicoastal elites. Not sure if they're socialist or they're progressive or they're moderate. They're all over the board. What is a Democrat now?
In fairness, they did get more votes than the Republicans did.
Well, hold on.
I agree with you.
Can we just do this? Can we do this? You're an economics professor, right? If you take the state of California out of this mess, right? Donald Trump got 2.2 million more votes than Hillary Clinton. Take one state out of the mix.
So your thing is people from California are not real Americans?
Sure,
why don't we take the state of Texas?
My point is it wasn't wide sweeping. You know, everyone on the left is saying, oh, she beat him in the popular vote. You take one state out, and he wins 49 states.
Take out the state of Texas, and then her popular vote margin gets even bigger. Further, more people voted for Democrats in the Senate than voted for Republicans. That's my point. The point is the Democrats are searching for a strategy. When Obama won in a big win, Republicans declared they would fight him.
They had Obama. They wanted to vote for Obama. Hillary Clinton, frankly, wasn't the most Democrats. Half the Democrats wanted Bernie Sanders. The other half wanted Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that's fair.
But who's the new titular head of the Democrat Party? Is it Elizabeth Warren? Is it Bernie Sanders?
I'm not disputing you. I'm not disputing you. I don't think it's Bernie Sanders. I think they're trying to figure out. One part of the Democratic Party does not trust Donald Trump, says he barely won. This is a very narrow election, and yet he wants to charge. It seems like he wants to charge ahead, not in a unifying way, but in a partisan way. Those people are going to fight him from the beginning. The other part of the Democratic Party says, no, maybe he'll be more like JFK rather than George W. Bush. He'll come in, start with infrastructure, start with something that's more unifying.
Right.
So let's keep an open mind. And I think they're arguing that out.
All right, take a listen to this. Keith Ellison. I'm not sure where Democrats are. You guys seem to be out in disarray. Take a listen to Keith Ellison.
He's not draining the swamp. He's filling it up more, and there's going to be more swamp creatures than ever before. Lobbyists and big-time investment bankers, he's not doing what he said he was going to do for average working Americans.
Now, the people elected Donald Trump, and Keith Ellison calls them swamp creatures.
No, he said Donald Trump is creating swamp creatures of lobbyists, etc., and that they were not supporting the people that supported Trump. I think Donald Trump needs to be careful about that. It's always hard to be an outsider candidate saying, I'm going to drain the swamp and rip it all up and start again.
You don't think he's draining the swamp? It sure seems like he is draining the swamp. There are a lot of people who are worried.
The first thing he did was let in the lobbyists. Now, Mike Pence is trying to switch that around and reverse it. So
I don't have a lot of time, Austin. I want to ask you this. You're a smart guy. You and I go at this all the time. You're a smart guy. You teach very smart people. You teach students at University of Chicago. What are they saying about Donald Trump?
Which ones?
The smart ones. The MBA students. How about that?
The country's politically divided. And I'd say the Republicans are saying Donald Trump's going to be a businessman. He'll probably be a centrist. And I'd say the Democrats are saying he scares me. All of this stuff about white nationalism
that was a nice ole you just did there. But I'm sure your MBA students, if they're smart, they'll see, you know, drop that corporate tax from 35 to 15% and unleash an engine of economic prosperity. Got to leave it right there, Professor.
Just make sure we pay for it.
Got to leave it right there, Professor. Thank you very much. Plenty more ahead as the factor moves along this evening. Will Donald Trump be able to undo President Obama's nuclear deal with Iran? In the Factor follow-up segment tonight, President-elect Trump and the Iranian nuclear deal During the campaign, Mr. Trump laced into the Obama administration over that nuclear agreement.
This is one of the worst deals ever made by any country in history. The deal with Iran will lead to nuclear problems. All they have to do is sit back 10 years.
With much of Obama's foreign policy legacy hanging on the deal's success, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that his administration is considering measures to strengthen the agreement before Donald Trump takes over. Joining us now from Washington for analysis, Fox News strategic analyst Colonel Ralph Peters. Colonel, your thoughts on President Obama? He's got 59 days left, and he's going to go after one of the things that probably Donald Trump was highly regarded for, to break up that Iran nuclear deal. Your thoughts?
Well, President Obama, and speaking without hyperbole, has been the most disastrous foreign policy president of my lifetime or yours, Eric. And now he's not thinking this through. He's so desperate, so fervently crazed to preserve this inept nuke deal with Iran. Again, he's not thinking it through. He's trying to box Trump in. And the problem is, he's going to be able to do it. He's granting businesses license for U.S. corporations. He's allowing U.S. corporations to do deals that involve the Revolutionary Guards, with the fig leaf that the Revolutionary Guards cannot be control a majority stake. He's lifted sanctions. The Europeans are not going to snap back in.
That's a big one, Colonel.
Well,
he's looking to further lift sanctions so that you can do more dealings with Iran, even before we even know if they're going to abide by their end of the agreement.
Well, we know they're not abiding it. But here's the point. With Obama taking away the peaceful tools we have to influence Iran, sanctions, withholding licenses, trade in dollars, he is making it inevitable. This Mr. Nobel Peace Prize president is making it inevitable that we will wind up shooting at Iranians, and with the Iranians shooting at us. Military option is all Obama is leaving the next president, and with the Iranians running wild across the Middle East, destructive in every country, Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, and elsewhere, in Lebanon, in Gaza, we have no options left but to pull triggers, and that's sad.
You can always reinstitute the sanctions and maybe stop that cash flow that we promised them that we were handing over. Possibly too late. Let's move on to this other one. Take a look. Earlier we saw President Obama meeting with Vladimir Putin, Russian President Putin, and it was a bit of an icy exchange. The two of them kind of staring down each other a little bit. Your thoughts on whether or not a Donald Trump presidency will soften that, or I guess melt some of the ice between the two countries?
My greatest worry about the president-elect is that he either doesn't understand Putin in Russia, and somehow he just doesn't get it. Vladimir Putin is our implacable enemy, not because we choose it, but because it's ingrained in him. It goes right to his little black heart. He hates the United States. He wants to hurt us. And he's humiliated two U.S. presidents in a row, George W. Bush and Barack Obama. And he is good. And the Westerners always underestimate Putin. He did influence our election through WikiLeaks, and I will tell you that that's the one area in foreign policy where I see Mr. Trump as very, very vulnerable. He needs to get smart on Russia.
Well, what do you think Russia's plan is, Colonel Peters? What is their ulterior motive in all this?
Well, Putin is very straightforward. In the short term, he wants sanctions relief because the Russian economy is hurting. He wants Trump to recognize Crimea as a legitimate part of Russia. Above all, he wants to break NATO.
Is that what he's looking at? Exactly that, break NATO, so Russia can go ahead and further their taking of Ukraine?
Yeah, well, he wants the eastern two-thirds of Ukraine. Now, the western parts, it's a complex story on that one. But he's trying to reestablish not the Soviet Empire. He knows he can't do that. He's trying to reestablish the Empire of the Tsars circa 1900. Problem is that includes eastern Poland, Belarus, Central Asia, etc. And so, look, his goals are simple. He wants to stick it to us. He wants to break up NATO. He's passionate about it.
It's insane, though, Colonel. It's in Russia's best interest if we do well. If our economy is strong, we use a lot of oil. Russia, that's their #1 export is oil. They would want a stronger U.S. economy.
You've got to understand the Russians. One of these Russian apparatchiki, one of these Russian Siloviki, they would cut off their arm if they knew, it would mean we had to cut off our finger.
All right, we're going to leave it right there, Colonel Peters. Thank you very much. Up next, should Barack Obama keep his opinions to himself once Donald Trump takes over as president? That debate when The Factor comes right back. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. And in the second Impact segment tonight, George W. Bush is famous for largely staying quiet about politics since leaving office, and President Obama has often praised him for it. But now that the president is leaving office, he says he might not be able to conduct himself the same way during the next administration.
As an American citizen who cares deeply about our country, if there are issues that have less to do with the specifics of some legislative proposal or battle, but go to core questions about our values and our ideals, and if I think that it's necessary or helpful for me to defend those ideals, then I'll examine it when it comes.
Joining us now from Nashville, Jon Meacham, the author of the book Destiny and Power, The American Odyssey of George Herbert Walker Bush. Jon, thanks for joining us. This is important. President Obama prior to this said he would stay out of politics or stay out of Donald Trump's way when he becomes the president. Now he's changing his tune. Why is that?
Well, with former presidents, less is more. They have an immense amount of capital, but if they spend it too quickly and too often, it depletes pretty fast. And so I think what he's saying is, there may be moments where he has to say something, but he knows Obama is a very careful student of history. He has appreciated George W. Bush. He studied George H.W. Bush pretty closely as well. And I think in both those cases, you had, in the Bush example, former presidents who stayed out of the way, not because they didn't believe strongly about what was happening, but because they think that second-guessing a sitting president from a former president's position is ultimately corrosive to the republic in some ways.
Jon, you talked about George H.W. Bush. You talked about George Bush staying out of the way. Did Jimmy Carter and did Bill Clinton stay out of the way?
Well, Jimmy Carter wrote a letter to the members of the UN Security Council during the first Gulf War, asking them to vote against George H.W. Bush's proposal. So no is the answer there. And President Clinton is, as ever, his own category. Remember, he was so involved in the 2012 campaign. There were moments, you'll remember, where it seemed as though Obama had actually hired Clinton as kind of a defense lawyer.
So it sounds like, and I summarize saying, in the last, 20 or 25 years or so, the former Democrat presidents get involved and the Republicans seem to stay out of it.
That has been the pattern in the last quarter century, as you say. Our friends Michael Duffy and Nancy Gibbs wrote a wonderful book called The President's Club, which is about these complicated relationships between former presidents. I think the great model really is Eisenhower, who was not a big fan of Jack Kennedy's. Jack Kennedy was not a big fan of his. But when Kennedy got in trouble at the Bay of Pigs, he reached out to Eisenhower. Eisenhower quietly came to Camp David and gave counsel. I suspect that's what Obama is hoping for. It's been speculated that in some ways he's keeping a channel open to Trump to see whether Trump might in fact reach out to him, perhaps privately.
All right, Jon, you wrote a book about Andrew Jackson, and Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's right-hand man, his advisor, senior advisor, has compared Donald Trump to Andrew Jackson. Is that a fair comparison?
I don't think so. I think it's Jacksonianism. I mean, the idea of a populist movement of people rising up against the entrenched interests. Clearly, that's happening now. Clearly, that happened in the 1820s under Jackson. But Jackson was a judge. He was a senator. He was a general. He came out of a more conventional political world than Trump has. And in some ways, therefore, Trump's populist appeal is in some ways even more authentic than Andrew Jackson's was.
Would it be fair to compare Trump to Ronald Reagan?
I don't think so, because Reagan spent an enormous amount. He spent the whole decade of the 50s reading, working on issues as a spokesman for GE. He spent 8 years as governor of California. You can disagree with Ronald Reagan on a lot of things, but he had a great deal of specific policy knowledge. And Trump, by his own admission, as you know, has said that he is an intuitive player. He's a gut player. Ronald Reagan was working from a set of ideas, an ideological creed. And Trump is, I think, if anything, quite non-ideological.
All right, send me off on homework because I have no more time. But is there a former president that we can compare Trump to? Just give me a name and we got to go. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, at least with the hair, I guess I'll give you Jackson. But but that may be where it stops.
So he's unique. He's a unique entity. All right, John, thank you very much. A quick footnote. Bill's new children's book he co-authored with James Patterson called Give Please a Chance is in stores today. The book is an instant classic and is an outstanding Christmas gift for kids. James Patterson discusses the book on the latest episode of the Contributing Factor podcast, which you can check out on BillO'Reilly.com and iTunes. And Bill's history book, Killing the Rising Sun, remains the #1 book in the country, and you can get it for free if you sign up for a premium membership on BillO'Reilly.com. When we come right back, Donald Trump spells out his legislative priorities in a brand new video. Right back with that. In the personal story segment tonight, late today, President-elect Trump released a brand new video laying out some of his legislative priorities, including his plan to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, cut energy regulations, and protect against cyber attacks. Joining us now for reaction from Boston is Adriana Cohen, a columnist with the Boston Herald, and from Atlanta, Robin Biro, a Democratic strategist. I'll start with you, Robin. Your thoughts. Now, a lot of this, his ideas, these are things that President-elect Trump had as candidate-elect Trump. Any issues with any of the items, infrastructure, releasing energy, making energy jobs more important, jobs, cybersecurity, your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, yes. I'm actually pleased with this announcement, and I agree with what Chuck Schumer just said, that these are things that the Democratic Party can work with him on. We have these same interests in common, and we will be glad to work on especially infrastructure improvements. We're all for that, and I'm pleased to see this, and I do see a way ahead where we can work together.
Adriana, I also noticed that Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump, promised to drain the swamp, continue to drain the swamp with a lifetime ban on lobbyists lobbying for foreign governments once you leave the administration.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. That's one of the things he laid out in his video this afternoon, is that he wants to put a 5-year ban in place that for all government officials, that once they leave Washington, they cannot become a lobbyist for 5 years. And I think that's a good thing. It's going to stem some corruption and special interest influence that is corrupting Washington. So I think it's great. He's laid out a lot of fantastic points. One of my favorite, Eric, is that he wants to cut regulations. So he said you have to cut 2 regulations for every new one you want to implement. And because we know that regulations are literally strangling the business sector and it's killing jobs. And so I think that should be his first order of business.
All right, Robin, talk to us about the method of releasing this. He put it out in a video rather than a press conference. I'm guessing the left is going to have a problem with that.
You know, I really don't think so. He is the change candidate. I'm kind of glad to see that he did something different. And, you know, like I said, we're willing to work with him on issues that we had that are of similar interest. These are all issues that Hillary Clinton herself was all for, and President Obama himself walked back TPP just recently. So, you know, there, like I said, there are some things that we can work with. I and the Democratic Party, of course, want to see the country succeed. So
okay, go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry, Adriana, your thoughts on the format, the video versus a press conference?
I think it's fantastic. You know, however he can effectively get his message across is a good thing, and this is going to work. I like this better than him tweeting it out. I think a video is great. And I like the fact that he's going to address cybersecurity, because we know that terrorists are actively targeting our critical infrastructure. And so can you imagine, God forbid, a 9/11 in the dark, where we're dealing with that with the lights off, or the Boston Marathon attack and you have no power and it happens in the dead of the winter? This is a nightmare scenario that that could happen in our future. We need to take it very seriously. And President Obama, I don't believe, did enough to address protecting us from cyber terrorism. And so I hope that Donald Trump gets very serious. They are considering all the threats we face with ISIS and North Korea, etc. And so I think he's off to a great start. He also obviously needs to address immigration. That was a big part of his
that was another one. I only have
campaign.
about 15 seconds, Robin. Your thoughts? He was fairly extensive on immigration as well in this.
Yes, there's really no changes from anything that he said prior on immigration, so this is a continuation of what he said. You know, my only thing is that Jan Brewer just said that the wall is more of a metaphor.
Got to go, guys. Thank you, Adriana, Robin. Thank you very much. Please remember, the spin stops here because we're looking out for you.